Hello, Freedom Preppers and the YouTube Nation, or YouTube and the Prepper Nation. Perrin Lovett here for Prepper News Weekly for Friday, March 2nd, 2018. Now, full disclosure, I'm actually recording this on the afternoon of Thursday, March 1st, around 2:40 p.m. And it's a weird, windy, blustery, rainy-looking, yet warm day, wind blowing, cloudy, and yet I'm glowing here in the makeshift covert bug-out vehicle studio, thanks to the odd lighting. And speaking of odd, and me and this camera, coming over here to this my favorite recording location, I did an experiment. I placed my high-tech, nearly 4-year-old smartphone camera down in the cup holder down here below me, and I recorded some kind of video like this as an experiment to see if I could drive and record. And believe it or not, I could. After one quick check, I learned to keep my eyes on the road rather than on the camera like this, looking right into the camera or looking around the studio. It worked out well. You could hear me. The subject matter was good, except I have two cup holders, and neither one of those is really worth a flip. And here comes the sun. It's getting warm in here. I might need to crank up the air conditioning. I may have to get some sort of mount. I might actually do more videos if I could do them in my car, because, unfortunately, I'm in the car a lot. None of that has anything to do with the news of the week. Happy March. March 2nd. Right now it's March 1st. And March Madness, even at the very beginning of the month, has already started. Not on the basketball court, that's coming, but in the federal courts, the state courts, the court of public opinion, and the royal courts of Washington and our state capitals, where sheer utter insanity is unfolding. I've got a couple of stories. During my little rehearsal, I went over the big one. I've just written 2 pieces for today, Friday, and I seem to remember most of it. To cover some other quick stories, remember you can always check freedompreppernews.com for all the latest news stories and other information that preppers need every day, every week. And per my doing this a day early, if anything big happens Thursday night, Friday morning, or of course even over the weekend, I'll be updating it at freedompreppernews.com. Check it out. I'll put a link down below in the description, along with freedomprepper.com and my own little website. Maybe a description of what I'm talking about. The Olympics wrapped up. It was, I think, the lowest rated Olympics in history, or at least in NBC television history, something like that. The U.S. Got some gold medals. We had our standout moments, certainly with snowboarding, and with the men's curling team winning their first ever gold medal. And the rest of it was kind of a bust. Men's hockey team washed out completely. Interesting to see Russia, the Olympic athletes of Russia, not Team Russia, beating Germany for the gold. There was some sort of scandal. The Russians weren't allowed to compete for their country. They were allowed, however, to compete as a group of Russians. And they did so in great style. And it was kind of fascinating to see them break the rules and sing their own national anthem in defiance of these Olympic powers at games that were otherwise unremarkable. It is getting warm in here, friends. I'm afraid you're going to have to listen to some dings and bings courtesy of Chrysler as we fire up the air conditioner, which makes too much noise, so we'll just open up the window a little bit more and I'll just sweat. Sweating the details of the news. I ran a big story. It was really big. I hadn't thought about this, but it's kind of important. We hear so much in the news, the liberal media, about global warming, climate change. Your SUV, your grill, your personal first world consumer habits are destroying the planet. It's going to overheat. The ice caps are going to melt. Polar bears will drown. Forests will burn down. It's all your fault. And all that is complete fiction. The truth is, yes, there's climate change. It goes up and down, but it's mostly driven by the cycles of the sun. And right now, for the past 30 years, we've been cycling down. How far down? Well, a lot of scientists think we're headed towards a full-blown ice age or a mini ice age, meaning that it's going to be a lot colder for a lot longer in future winters in the next few decades, and the summers are going to be much milder and shorter. The closer you are to the equator, the less likely you'll be affected, but people that live up in the south, like me, pretty far to the north, and all my good Yankee friends, my European friends, and everybody in Canada and Russia, you may have trouble. It may turn into polar, barren, tundra-like waste where you are. And that's really going to affect the way people live, and especially the way they eat, because it's going to affect, if it happens, food production. The one good thing about global warming everybody recognized was that it would increase food production. We'd have more food growing in more places. We could feed more people more easily. You freeze half the planet, and you're going to take away a lot of production. So go back and read that article at fp.com and think about things that you can do. You don't have to move down to Brazil, but you might want to consider maybe a partially submerged in the ground greenhouse. There's a lot of stories going on. Speaking of Brazil and other countries bringing immigrants to America, the Supreme Court declined to hear the DACA, the Dreamer case. It's going to go back to the Court of Appeals, which was previously upheld a district court ruling against the Trump administration. DACA, of course, was an Obama-era executive order program, which basically ordered the immigration office to ignore American law and not deport people who were in this country illegally. And the courts are saying, hey, Donald Trump, barring extraordinary circumstances, you've got to keep that. You've got to keep on breaking the law. I'm not really worried about that. I'm pretty sure that amnesty is coming for all the illegals in this country, which will open up another can of worms. I'm going to skip right to it now. The big can of worms, we're still getting fallout from the school shooting down in Florida. Scott had a fantastic Pondering Prepper video about how to keep your child safe in the event of a school shooting. There are things you can do. You can't be there to protect them all the time. Nothing is foolproof, but a little situational awareness, a little awareness of what guns sound like and what you should do around them, especially if you're a smaller child, is invaluable. He also pointed out some stats of his own. The media keeps throwing around the fact that in 2018, there's already been 17 school shootings in America. 17 school shootings in 2 months, less than 2 months. Well, turns out there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. It turns out they can count just about anything as a school shooting. Like some nut job that tries to shoot himself with a non-functioning gun at a school that's been closed for 20 years. That's a school shooting. Police officer sitting on a bench and a preschooler gets up, plays around, and ends up firing the officer's gun accidentally. That's a school shooting. Turns out that only about 2 of the actual school shootings were really school shootings, including the one in Florida that has set off a firestorm of debate about gun control, not about government school control, not about what's wrong with our society where people would want to shoot up schools, not about the role that psychotropic medication plays in every one of these real school shootings. No, it's all about the guns. The guns did it. We've got to ban guns. We've got to have restrictions on guns, restrictions on teenagers with guns, where you can carry guns. Forget the hundreds of existing gun laws that don't work, that didn't work. We need more. And it's not just limited to the legal realm. A whole list of companies are cutting ties with the NRA because, as we all know, the NRA caused that school shooting. Wayne LaPierre walked in with that kid and said, hey kid, start shooting. Delta Airlines has cut ties. They've got rid of their discount program that I never knew existed. I've been shorting myself some saved money. And in response to that, the Republican senators in Georgia, where Delta is based, are looking at killing a tax exemption on jet fuel that Delta enjoys every year to the tune of $50 million. Hey, you're going to slap our constituents in the face? You can pay the same gas tax that they pay. Interesting. Dick's Sporting Goods announced that they will no longer sell assault rifles. And, I would imagine in a year or two, you'll either hear that Dick's Sporting Goods sales are way down or that they're going out of business. It has nothing to do with the gun ban. Walmart is making some changes to the way they sell guns. A bunch of companies, a bunch of politicians, actors, Tide Pod eating millennials are telling us about the Second Amendment and about public policy. Rick Scott down in Florida wants to raise the minimum age to buy a gun from 18 to 21. Now, I just saw a big box of Ritz crackers with 18 packets per box. I wonder if Rick Scott will have the courage to make Nabisco raise the count from 18 packets per box to 21. We'll see. So I found a video that is playing concurrently at FP.com and on the app. Lord, it is getting hot up in here. It's Bill Whittle with some statistics blowing gun control lies completely away. And most of what the left throws out, what the idiot Republicans keep falling for, like Donald Trump, going to ban bump stocks by executive order illegally. Donald Trump, who says that, we need to seize the guns now. We'll have due process later. Due process is kind of a big legal concept. It came from the Magna Carta, the rights of Englishmen under the English common law, and it's enshrined in the Constitution. You can't take people's stuff or infringe their freedom without due process. Now, he's probably talking about emergencies where the police know of an active threat and they've got to neutralize it to save lives. That's okay. He says a lot of things. But so do the gun grabbers, the Coalition Against Freedom, Communist Party USA, all these nut job groups. They want to take your guns away, and they lie. They tell lies like America is the most heavily armed country, and that's why we have the most murders in the world. Now, we are by far the most heavily armed country, both by capita and the sheer number of guns, about 400 million in private hands. But we are far from the most murderous country. We're not even in the top 20. Watch that video. Honduras is number one. And then you got places like South Africa and other countries where liberals want to import people from into America. It's funny. I found some statistics about murders and deaths, sources of death, in the United States. We'll go ahead and put this window all the way down, and that one too, hopefully to get a cross breeze. All the windows are down now. I'm exposed to the elements for you. I found numbers from 2014. It was based on some research I had also done previously. DOJ, FBI crime statistics from 2014 about deaths in America, murders in America. In 2014, 248 Americans were murdered with rifles of all kinds, to include assault rifles. 248. About 440, I'm going by memory here, 440 Americans were murdered with baseball bats and hammers, which of course you heard the speaker of the Chuck Schumer or somebody talking about banning hammers and baseball bats. Ban baseball. Ban Chipper Jones, who's in favor of gun control. 660 Americans were killed by fists and feet, kicks and punches. That's 2.5, almost 3 times as many people killed by all rifles combined. 8,100 and some odd Americans were murdered with some kind of firearm. Now, that's the vast majority not being rifles and certainly not being assault rifles. And that's only about 60%, a little more than half, math challenge folks, of the 14,000 plus murders committed in 2014. That means that about 40% were committed, 6,000 or so were committed by some other means than firearms, strangulation, baseball bats, poisoning, drowning, and so forth. But that's 14,000 too many murders, period. But it's not as many as the 32,000 Americans killed in 2014 by automobiles, which I don't remember hearing anybody wanting to ban or even have reasonable restrictions on. That's a lot, but it's not as many as the 200,000 people killed by medical mistakes made by doctors and hospitals. 200,000, 800 times as many killed by doctors as by rifles of all kinds. Still not as many as the 365,000 killed by obesity-related diseases. And there's some question as to what constitutes an obesity-related death. But that's a lot. But it's still only a little more than half of the 652,000 plus abortions in America. So if you add abortion doctors, these legal abortions, to other doctors, you get about 850,000 Americans. Is that right? Yes, 850,000 dying from medical causes. 3,400 times more likely to be killed by some kind of doctor than by any kind of rifle. So obviously we need to ban AR-15s. It's the only way to save lives. And of course, they always leave all. They talk about the people killed by guns. Sometimes they get the numbers right. Sometimes they completely lie about them, make them up. But they never talk about the lives saved by guns. And I don't have the book here. I'm not going to wave it around. But More Guns, Less Crime by John Lott. Every year, more than 1 million Americans save their lives or the lives of people around them because they have a gun. And in 99% of those cases, they never have to shoot anybody. Guns save lives. The guns almost save as many lives as are taken by all other sources combined. So, remember these statistics, the real truth about guns, when the hysterical debate is raging. I wish, I hope, and I pray that some of our courageous politicians might stumble upon the truth and maybe use it. Now, one school shooting is too many. Any violence is too much violence. But at least we should proceed from the truth. And the truth is, the solution that's always proposed looks something like communism. And it's no coincidence that great tyrants throughout history have also favored common sense, gun control. You know, people like Adolf Hitler, Adolf Eichmann, Pol Pot, Mao Zedong, Chiang Kai-shek, Vladimir Lenin, Joseph Stalin, Idi Amin, and on and on and on. Every great dictator favors gun control. And some of them use it. And some of them, like in the 20th century, managed to kill 200 million innocent people, which is a little bit more than 100 years' worth of 248 people dying every year by rifles. So maybe the problem is not the guns. Maybe there's another problem, and maybe we need to address that. I hope I can download this video. It's getting a little long, longest one ever, and it's important. Please share this and the information I'm posting today. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you back next week. Hey, maybe even on the road, moving.